Hello students, welcome to the class of English Literature. Today we are going to discuss a new topic, that is an essay. The title of the essay is The Spectator Club. This essay is written by Richard Steele and it is included in the syllabus of BA Part 1st. Richard Steele was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1672 and he died in 1729. Richard Steele was an Irish writer, he was a soldier and a politician, educated at the Charterhouse and Merton College, Oxford. He left before taking degree and joined the army in 1694 and he reached to the rank of captain. Appointed gazetteer in 1707, a post he held until 1710. Steele embarked on a hugely successful journalistic career assisted by Addison. Steele owes his chief reputation to his effort as an essayist. The Tatler, which he started in 1709, was the beginning of a new era of periodical writing. So Steele was famous for his periodical writings. He wrote periodicals, The Tatler and The Spectator. The Tatler was followed in 1711 by The Spectator, then by The Guardian in 1713. In both The Tatler and The Spectator, Steele and other writer Joseph Addison, they worked together. The style of Richard Steele is easy and familiar. Antithesis and climax are seldom used in his writings. In 1713, as a staunch Whig, he became a member of Parliament. Steele was knighted and appointed supervisor of Drury Lane Theatre. He continued to publish pamphlets and periodicals and had a success with his sentimental comedy that is entitled The Conscious Lovers in 1722. There is an introduction of the essay which we are going to discuss. The essay The Spectator Club is perhaps Richard Steele's finest achievement. This essay was published in the periodical The Spectator. In this essay, Steele has given an account of the members of the club. They invented an imaginary club, the Spectator Club, and there in this essay there is an account description of the members of that club. These members represent important sections of society. Steele describes 6 of the members of the club, and these members are: first one, Sir Roger D. Coverley, then the student of law, means the lawyer. Third one, Captain Sentry, Sir Andrew Freeport, Will Honeycomb, the clergyman. So these 6 members are described in the essay. Now we will discuss the text of the essay. Richard Steele begins the essay. He writes, "The first of our society is a gentleman of Worcestershire of an ancient descent, a baronet, his name Sir Roger D. Coverley." So we can see the essay begins with introduction of Sir Roger D. Coverley. He is the first member of the Spectator Club. He is a gentleman who belongs to Worcestershire of an ancient descent, and he is baronet, and his name is Sir Roger D. Coverley. His great grandfather was inventor of that famous country dance which is called after him. His great grandfather invented a dance, and that dance was named after him. All who know that shire means area, place, are very well acquainted with the parts and merits of Sir Roger. All the people who know that area in which Sir Roger D. Coverley lives, they know very well about the parts and merits of Sir Roger. He is a gentleman that is very singular in his behavior. He is a unique person. But his singularities proceed from his good sense. His uniqueness presents his good sense and are contradiction to the manners of the world. But his uniqueness is contrary, is opposite to the manner of this world. Means he is not in accord with this world. His ideas are different from the other people of the world. Only as he thinks the world is in the wrong. And why he is different or contradicting to the manners of the world? Because he thinks that the world is in the wrong. However, this humor creates him no enemies. But because of this thinking, he is not having any enemies. He thinks that the world is in the wrong. But even then, there is no enemy of Sir Roger de Coverley because of this thinking. The reason behind this is described here, for he does nothing with soreness or obstinacy, because the behavior of Sir Roger de Coverley is sweet. He is not doing any work with bitterness. He is not an obstinate person. And his being unconfined to modes and forms makes him but the readier and more capable to please and oblige all who know him. And all the people who know him, who know Sir Roger de Coverley, they are happy with him, they are obliged to him. When he is in town, he lives in Soho Square. When he lives in town, he lives in Soho Square. Soho Square is lying to the south of Oxford Street, London, and in Steele's day, it was a fashionable residential area. So he was living in Soho Square. It is said he keeps himself a bachelor by reason, and he is a bachelor, and there is a reason behind this. And what is the reason? That he was closed in love by a perverse, beautiful widow of the next county to him, and a widow who was living next county to him deceived Sir Roger de Coverley, and just because of that reason he is bachelor till now. Before this disappointment, Sir Roger was what you call a fine gentleman, and before meeting this beautiful widow, he was a perfect fine gentleman, had often supped with my Lord Rochester and Sir George Atheres, fought a duel upon his first coming to town, and kicked bully Dawson in a public coffee house for calling him youngster. He met with reputed people like Lord Rochester and Sir George Atheres, and when he came to the town first time, he kicked bully Dawson because Dawson called him a youngster in public coffee house. But being ill used by the above mentioned widow, he was very serious for a year and a half, and though his temper being naturally jovial, he at last got over it. Before meeting this widow, he was a perfect gentleman, but after this incident, he was very serious for 1 year and half. Because his temper, his behavior is jovial, he is a happy person, that's why he at last got over this disappointment. But after this, he grew careless of himself, and he never dressed afterwards. He never dressed according to the fashion of time after this incident. He continues to wear a coat and doublet of the same cut that were in fashion at the time of his repulse. When that widow left him, at that time there was a fashion of a coat and doublet, and he is using the same fashionable coat and doublet at present also, which in his merry humours he tells us has been in and out 12 times since he first wore it. And the time when he first wore that coat and doublet, and till now It has come in fashion and come out and gone out of fashion 12 times. But he is still wearing that coat and doublet. It is said Sir Roger grew humble in his desires after he had forgot his cruel beauty, insomuch that it is reported he has frequently offended with beggars and gypsies. But this is looked upon by his friends rather as matter of raillery than truth. He is in his 56th year. He is cheerful, happy, and hearty. Keeps a good house both in town and country. He is having good house both in town, both in city, and both in village also. A great lover of mankind. He is a great lover of mankind. But there is such a mirthful cast in his behavior that he is rather beloved than esteemed, means than respected. Instead of respecting, people love him better. His tenants grew rich. His servants look satisfied. Servants are satisfied because he is having good behavior. All the young women profess to love him, and the young men are glad of his company. So the people who are all around him, his servant, his tenants, young women, young men, they all are satisfied and happy with that person. It shows that he is having a good personality. When he comes into a house, he calls the servants by their names and talks all the way upstairs to a visit. When he moves upstairs, he talks to his servants. I must not omit that Sir Roger is a justice of the quorum, that he fills the chair at a quarter session with great abilities. For quarter session means for 3 months in a year, he fills the chair of judge, and he is having great abilities of a judge, and 3 months ago gained universal applause. He got universal praise by explaining a passage in the Game Act, because he explained a passage about the Game Act. That's why he was acknowledged, he was appreciated. So this is the first character of the periodical, the Spectator Club. There are total 6 members. So this one is the first member, and the people who knew about that place, the county of Sir Roger, they knew him very well. Sir Roger was a man of extraordinary nature and had a good sense. He always found fault with the ways of the world, but this unusual nature never made him any enemies because of his pleasant behavior. Sir Roger had a unique capacity to please others. Sir Roger was a bachelor because he was disappointed in the love of a beautiful widow. Before this disappointment, Sir Roger was a normal, happy young man. He moved in society of important persons like Lord Rochester, Sir George Atheres, etc. However, after being ill-used by the widow, he lost all his joviality and interest in social life for more than a year. He was very serious for some time, and gradually his jovial nature returned, and he grew careless about his dress. He wore a coat and jacket of the same cut which was in fashion at the time of his disappointment with that widow. Now Sir Roger is 56 years old, but he is quite hearty, happy. He is having a house in village as well as in town also. He had such a good nature that people love him. He also treats his servants well. He is also the justice of the Quran, and he showed his judicial abilities of the judge. So this is all about the first character of the Spectator Club, that is Sir Roger de Coverley. The second member of the Spectator Club is the lawyer. After describing Sir Roger de Cavalier, Steele has described another companion of the club, and he is a lawyer. The name of the lawyer is not mentioned in the essay. He was also a bachelor. Steele writes, "The gentleman next in esteem and authority among us is another bachelor, who is a member of the Inner Temple, a man of great probity, wit, and understanding. Inner Temple is a place where law is taught." So he is a bachelor and he is a member of the Inner Temple. He is a man of great probity. He is having wit and understanding. But he had chosen his place of residence. He had chosen this place, the Inner Temple, rather to obey the direction of an old, humorsome father than in pursuit of his own inclination. He himself is not interested in studying law. He is living in the Inner Temple just because to obey his father's order. It shows that the father of this person wants his son to become a lawyer, but he himself is not interested in law. So, what is his interest? He was placed there to study the laws of the land and is most learned of any of the house of those of the stage. He is more interested in drama. He is interested in stage. Aristotle and Longinus are much better understood by him than Littleton or Coke. Aristotle was a famous Greek philosopher. There is a reference to his Poetics. Longinus was also Greek philosopher and grammarian of the 3rd century AD. He is best known for his book on the Sublime. So this person is more interested in Aristotle and Longinus. He understands them very well. Then Littleton or Coke. Littleton or Coke. Sir Thomas Littleton was a judge who wrote a treatise on the law of property, and Sir Edward Coke published a commentary on Littleton under the title Institutes. So this person is much interested in Aristotle and Longinus, and he is not interested in Littleton or Coke. Means he is not interested in the subject of law. The father sends up every post questions relating to marriage articles, leases, and tenures in the neighborhood, all which questions he agrees with an attorney to answer and take care of in the lump. By every post, his father sent him questions. These questions are related to subject of law, like marriage article is a legal agreement regarding the property of a person about to marry. So when his father sent him questions regarding these topics, what he does, he discusses with an attorney with other person to answer them and send the answer of those questions to his father. So he himself does not bother to answer those questions. He is studying the passion themselves when he should be inquiring into the debates among men which arise from them. A lawyer inquire into the debates which arises due to passions, but this man is not interested, is not inquiring into the debates. He is studying the passion themselves. He knows the argument each of the orations of Demosthenes and Tully, but not one case in the reports of our own court. Demosthenes was Athenian orator and patriot. Tully was Roman orator, author, and politician. So this man, the lawyer, is not interested in law. He does not know even a single case of his own court, of the local court. Whether he is much interested in law, much interested in drama, much interested in literature. He knows the argument or orations of Demosthenes and Tully. No one ever took him for a fool. Nobody understands, nobody thinks that he is a fool, but none except his intimate friends know he has a great deal of wit. His intimate friends, his close friends, know very well that he is having a great deal of wit. This turn makes him at once both disinterested and agreeable. Just because of this reason, he at times becomes disinterested as well as agreeable. People are agree with him, but they are also disinterested in him just because of his this nature. As few of his thoughts are drawn from business, they are most of them fit for conversation. Few of his thoughts are taken from business, and they are most of them fit for conversation. His taste for books is little too just for the age he lives in. He has read all but approves of very few. He has read many books, but he is not approved with all of them. He approves of very few. His familiarity with the customs, manners, actions, and writings of the ancients makes him a very delicate observer of what occurs to him in the present world. He is familiar with the customs, manners, actions, and writings of ancient writers. That's why he is a very delicate observer. He is having a keen observation power of what occurs to him, what appears to him in this world. He is an excellent critic, and the time of the play is his hour of business. He is not interested in law, but when it is the time of drama, it is the time of his business. Exactly at 5, he passes through New Inn, crosses through Russell Court, and takes a turn at Will's till the play begins. And he goes to Will. New Inn is a square near the Inner Temple, London. Russell Court is a narrow street in the above neighborhood, and Will's is the coffee house in Russell Street, frequented by men of letters and politicians. And the further there is introduced the Rose. The Rose is a tavern frequented by actors. So what he does at the time of his business, that is the time of the play, exactly at 5 o'clock, he passes through New Inn, then he crosses through Russell Court and takes a turn at Will's till the play begins. He has his shoes rubbed and his periwig powdered at the barber's as you go into the Rose. When he go to watch the the play, he gets ready for it. He has his shoes rubbed and his periwig powdered. Why? It is for the good of the audience when he is at the play, when he remains present during the play. It is very good for the audience. How? For the actors have an ambition to please him. Because he is a good critic, he is interested in stage. When he is present in the time of play, the actors have an intention, they have an ambition to please this lawyer, this person. So this is about the lawyer. We have seen that he took to the study of law in obedience to his father. He was more interested in the study of drama and dramatic criticism. The philosophers like Aristotle and Longinus were very well understood by him. His father used to send him various questions on law in order to ensure that his son is studying law. But the son outwitted the father by getting them answered through a lawyer whom he had engaged for the purpose. Nobody took him as a fool, but only his friends knew that he had a great wit. He liked to read the books which were not of the age he lived. He was familiar with the writings, custom, actions, and manners of ancient writers, which made him a keen observer of the worldly affairs. He was a good critic. his real hour of the business is the time of the play. The presence of an able critic among the audience, it arises in the actors an intention to give their best performance possible. So this is all about the second character or second member of the spectator club, that is the lawyer. Now we will discuss the third character of the spectator club, that is named here. He is Sir Andrew Freeport. Richard Steele writes, the person of next consideration is Sir Andrew Freeport, a merchant of great eminence in the city of London, a person of indefatigable industry, strong reason, and great experience. So the third member of the club is a merchant of great eminence, of great fame. He is a famous merchant in the city of London. He is a person of indefatigable industry. He is a very hard-working person, having strong reason and a great experience also. His notions of trade are noble and generous. His ideas about business are noble and generous. And as every rich man has usually some sly way of jesting, which would make no great figure were he not a rich man. So this person, Sir Andrew Freeport, is also having a way of jesting, and that is, he calls the sea the British Common. He calls the sea by the name the British Common. He is acquainted with commerce in all its parts. He knows about business, about all the parts of business, and he will tell you that it is a stupid and barbarous way to extend dominion by arms. He is not in favor of fighting. If a person is expanding his dominion, expanding his area by struggle, by fighting, that is a barbarous and stupid way. For true power is to be got by art and industry. According to him, if a person is hard working and by his hard work he is extending his dominion, that is the real power. He will often argue that if this part of our trade were well cultivated, we should gain from one nation and if another from another. So he always talk about the business. He says that the particular part of the trade, if that part were well cultivated, then we should gain from one nation one thing and another from another nation. I have heard him prove that diligence makes more lasting acquisition than valor, and that sloth has ruined more nation than the sword. This is a very beautiful line. Sir Andrew Freeport proved that diligence, hard work makes more lasting effect than valor, than bravery, and sloth, laziness, has ruined more nation than the swords. The sword has not ruined the nation as laziness has ruined. He abounds in several frugal maxims. He is having many maxims regarding miserliness, and amongst which the greatest favorite is, he says, a penny saved is a penny got. If we are saving some money, that means we have earned that money. A general trader of good sense is pleasanter company than a great general scholar. And Sir Andrew, having a natural unaffected eloquence, the perspicuity of his discourse gives the same pleasure that the wit would in another man. He has made his fortune himself. He is a hard-working person and he has made his fortune himself, and says that England may be richer than other kingdoms by as plain methods as he himself is richer than other men. He is richer than other person, and the methods employed by him should be used by the nation. He says that England may be richer than other kingdoms in the same method, by following the same tricks or plain methods as he himself is richer than other persons. Though at same time I can say this of him, that there is not a point in the compass but blows home a ship in which he is an owner. It shows that he is owner of various ships. So, Sir Andrew Freeport is the third member of the Spectator Club. He is a good businessman of London. He is very laborious, experienced, and has a great understanding. His knowledge of commerce is extensive, and he has his own ideals of the ways of enlarging the country's trade. He is of the opinion that a dominion may be extended by art and industry than by power. Diligence or industry alone would help the country to gain things of permanent value, and sloth or laziness, more than the sword, had caused the ruin of many nations. He knows many short maxims. He has a unique art of speech. He is a self made person, and he believes that England too can become richer than other kingdoms by methods which has so benefited him. So this is about the third character of the Spectator Club, third member of the Spectator Club. The fourth member of the Spectator Club is Captain Sentry. After Sir Andrew Freeport, the author has described the merits of Captain Sentry as he writes, "Next to Sir Andrew in the club room sits Captain Sentry, a gentleman of great courage, good understanding, but invincible modesty. He is very modest person. He is having good understanding, great courage, but is very modest. He is one of those that deserve very well, but are very awkward at putting their talents within the observation of such as should take notice of them. He is one of those people who are deserving very well, who are talented, who deserve very well, but they are not capable in putting their talents in front of those people who can promote them, who should take notice of their talent. So this type of people remain backward in showing their talents. They are talented, but they are not capable to show their talent to their superiors or their seniors. So Captain Sentry is also that kind of person who is very deserving, but he is not capable to show his talent in the observation of those people who should take notice of his talent. He was some years a captain and behaved himself with great gallantry in several engagements and at several sieges. So he has shown his courage in several engagements, in several fights and several sieges, and he behaved with great gallantry, means great bravery. He has shown his bravery. But having small estate of his own and being next heir to Sir Roger, he has quitted a way of life in which no man can rise suitably to his merit. Because he is having his own property, he is having a small estate of his own, and he was also next heir to Sir Roger. That's why he left that life of a soldier. He left that life because he thinks that according to the merit of a person is not capable to rise in that profession. That's why he left, he quitted. Who is not something of a courtier as well as a soldier. I have heard him often lament that in a profession where merit is placed in so conspicuous a view, impudence should get the better of modesty. He says, he often laments that this is a profession in which merit is not noticed, merit is placed in so conspicuous a view, And impudent person get the better position than modest person. When he has talked to this purpose, I never heard him make a sore expression whenever he talked about this matter, because he has left that place, his position, because of his modest nature. But whenever he talks about this, he never shows a sore or a bitter expression, but he frankly confesses that he left the world because he was not fit for it. He left that field because he was not fit for it. He confesses this thing. A strict honesty and an even regular behavior are in themselves obstacles to him that must press through crowds who endeavor at the same end with himself, the favor of a commander. To get the favor of a commander, there was a great competition, and he had the same obstacles to press through the crowds who endeavor, who is trying to the same time to get the favor of a commander, and the obstacle for Captain Sentry was his honesty, his regular behavior. So, in this paragraph, we come to know about the character of Captain Sentry, that he is not receiving good position because of his modest behavior. He is capable, he is having ability, he is talented, but he was not capable to show his talents in military life. He will, however, in his way of talk, excuse generals for not disposing according to man's desert or inquiring into it. For, says he even excuses his seniors who did not notice his talent. He says that great man who has a mind to help me has as many to break through to come to me as I have to come at him. He wants to say that as he is not capable to reach to that person, or he is not capable to show his talent to that person, in the same way the person who is having superior position or the position of a commander, he is also having the same obstacles to reach to him, to notice his capabilities, to notice his talents. Therefore, he will conclude that the man who would make a figure, especially in military way, must get over all false modesty and assist his patron against the importunity of other pretenders by proper assurance in his own vindication. So he wants to say that if a person wants to make a figure in military life, he should get over all modesty, he should leave modesty. He says it is a civil cowardice to be backward in asserting what you ought to expect, as it is military fear to be slow in attacking when it is your duty. There is a beautiful use of simile. He says it is a civil cowardice. A person, a civilian, is coward if he remains backward in showing his, in telling the things which he ought to expect. It is just like the same. If in military a soldier is fighting and he is slow in attacking his enemy when it is his duty to attack, and he remains slow, then it is a cowardice, it is called coward. So in the same way, a person, a civilian, is called coward if he remains backward in telling his point of view. With this candor, with this frankness, does the gentleman speak of himself and others. There is a frankness in his speaking. The same frankness runs through all his conversation. The military part of his life has furnished him with many adventures, in the relation of which he is very agreeable to the company, for he is never overbearing, though accustomed to command men in the utmost degree below him, nor even too obsequious from an habit of obeying men highly above him. His nature is balanced. He is not overbearing in commanding the person who are below him, and he is not flattering the person who are above him. So he keeps a balanced behavior with all the person, whether they are senior to him or whether they are junior to him. So this is the character of Captain Sentry. He is very courageous, intelligent, and had good understanding. He is such a man who has not received good consideration of his abilities. He has been captain in military for some years and fought bravely, but he left the army because even though he rendered meritorious service which anyone could see and appreciate, promotion did not come to him. Or fifth member of the Spectator Club is Will Honeycomb. Richard Steele writes about him, but that our society may not appear a set of humorists unacquainted with the gallantries and pleasures of the age, we have amongst us the gallant Will Honeycomb, a gentleman who, according to his years, should be in the decline of his life, but having ever been very careful of his person and always had a very easy fortune, time has made but a very little impression either by wrinkles on his forehead or traces on his brain. So the next member is Will Honeycomb. Steele says that our society or club is not a group of humorists only who are unacquainted with braveries or pleasures of life. We have among us a brave person, Will Honeycomb. He is a gentleman who is, according to his age, is an old person. He is in the decline of his life, means he is old person. But because he is very careful about his personality and he is having a very good fortune during all his life, that's why time has made but a very little impression on him. So there are not showing his old age. He's not showing his old age. There are no wrinkles on his forehead and his brain is also working very well. He is an old person, but because he is very careful about his personality and he is also a fortunate person, he has not seen very much difficulties in his life. That's why he is not looking very old. His person is well turned and of a good height. He is having a good height. His personality is very good. He is very ready at that sort of discourse with which men usually entertain women. This person is more interested in women. He has all his life dressed very well and remembers habits as others do, men, as other person remember. But other person they remember men, women, but this person remember habits. He can smile when one speaks to him and laughs easily. He knows the history of every mode and can inform you from which of the French king's wenches or wives and daughters had this manner of curling their hair and that way of placing their hoods, whose frailty was covered by such a sort of a petticoat, and whose vanity to show her foot made that part of the dress show short in such a year. So he is talking about the fashion of women. He know the history of fashion, and his talk is basically related to the world of women. He knows the history of every fashion, and he can tell us that the manner in which our daughters and wives are curling their hair, they have taken from which French king's ventures, which French king's mistress they have learnt all those things. In a word, if we talk about Will Honeycomb in a word, that is that all his conversation and knowledge have been in the female world. He is basically interested in the female world. All his knowledge, all his talk is associated with females. As other men of his age will take notice to you what such a minister said upon such and such an occasion. He will tell you when the Duke of Monmouth danced at court, such a woman was then smitten, another was taken with him at the head of his troop in the park. Other person of his age, because he is an old person, and other persons of his age will talk about the sayings or talks of ministers and what the minister said upon such an occasion. But this person, Will Honeycomb, will talk about the history of Duke of Monmouth when he danced at the court, which woman was then smitten and which woman was taken with him to the park. He will talk about the world of women. In all these important relations, he has never about the same time received a kind glance or a blow of a fan for some celebrated beauty, mother of the present Lord such a one. And in all these important relations, he always received a kind glance. He gets fan, and one of his fans is a celebrated beauty who is the mother of present Lord. If you speak of a young commoner that said a lively thing in the house, he starts up. He has good blood in his veins. Tom Marable begot him. The rogue cheated me in that affair. That young fellow's mother used me more like a dog than any woman I ever made advances to. This way of talking of his very much enlivens a conversation among us of a more sedate turn, because other persons of the club are of serious nature. But the way of talking of Will Honeycomb enlivens a conversation when he makes jokes among them. And I find there is not one of the company but myself who rarely speak at all, but speaks of him as of that sort of a man who is usually called a well-bred fine gentleman. The writer says that he is of the opinion that this man is be called as a well-bred fine gentleman. To conclude, his character still says, where women are not concerned, he is an honest, worthy man. If we are not talking about his interest in women, we can say that he is an honest and worthy man. So the author has talked about Will Honeycomb here. Though he is an old person, there is no traces of the passage of time in his brain and in his personality. He has an attractive personality and can impress women by his talk. He dresses well and is well acquainted with the history of every fashion that remained in vogue in England. Will Honeycomb is always interested in matters pertaining to women. In his conventions, he talked mostly of women, their dresses, their manners, their fashions. He has a good knowledge of history, but he can tell that the hairstyle or heads of our wives and daughters resemble to those of wenches of French kings. But according to author Richard Steele, he is a gentleman. Though he is talking about all these things, He's basically interested in the world of women, but according to writer, he's a fine gentleman living the relations of women. If we leave his talks about women, we can see that he is an honest and worthy person. There is the last member of the Spectator Club, and that is the clergyman. Steele says, I cannot tell whether I am to account him whom I am next to speak of as one of our company. The writer is in confusion whether he should count this person in the member of club or not. Why? For he visits us but seldom, because he is a visitor. He is not a permanent member. But when he comes, it adds to every man else a new enjoyment of himself. He is a clergyman, a very philosophic man of general learning, great sanctity of life, and the most exact good breeding. He is a pious man. He has the misfortune to be of a very weak constitution, and consequently cannot accept of such cares and business as performance in his function would oblige him to. He is having a weak physique. He is therefore among divines what a chamber councillor is among lawyers. The probity of his mind and the integrity of his life create him followers. He is having many followers just because of his intelligence, just because of his good behavior, good nature, because of his integrity, as being eloquent or loud advances others. He seldom introduces the subject he speaks upon. He is a orator, we can say he is a very good speaker, and whenever he speaks on a topic, he never introduces his topic of his subject. But we are so far gone in years that he observes what he is among us, when he is among us, and earnestness to have him fall on some divine topic. But whenever he comes, whenever he speaks among these other persons of Spectator Club, he falls on some divine topic which he always treats with much authority. As one who has no interest in this world, as one who is hastening to the object of all his wishes and conceives hope from his decays and infirmities, and these are my ordinary companions. So at the end of the essay, the author tells us about one of his companions who seldom waited him. He is a philosopher and clergyman. He lives a sacred life. He is very weak in constitution. Because of ill health, he cannot fulfill the responsibilities which promotion in the church might have brought him. He speaks on divine topic with authority, and he wishes for the good of the world even after his death. So here we have seen in this essay, Richard Steele has introduced various characters, various members of the Spectator Club, and by presenting these members, he has talked about the members of different categories of society. Every type of character of the time is presented in this essay. Thank you.